The morning sun rose slowly over the fields, spreading its golden light across the small house where Huyen and Dee lived with little Maya. The day began, as it always did, with the sound of the rooster and the rustle of vegetables being gathered in the garden. Life here was simple, built on hard work and quiet dreams. Huyen moved quickly between tasks: washing, cooking, preparing a basket of fresh greens to sell at the market. Dee was busy outside, tying bamboo stakes to support the bitter melon vines they had planted together just a few weeks ago. His hands were rough, his back bent from work, but there was peace in his eyes. This was a life he had chosen, far from riches, yet close to what mattered most. Maya, with her school bag almost too big for her small shoulders, skipped around the yard before heading off to class. She stopped to hug her mother tightly, then turned to wave at Dee, who raised his hand with a tired but tender smile. Inside the house, the great-grandmother shuffled slowly from room to room, humming softly to herself, her memory flickering like a fragile flame. She often mistook the present for the past, still searching for loved ones who were long gone. Yet, Huyen cared for her with patience and love, never raising her voice, never letting irritation show. Bibi, the family's loyal dog, barked happily as if to remind everyone that even in the weight of daily struggles, joy could be found in the smallest things. It was, to anyone watching, just another ordinary day in the countryside. But beneath the surface of chores and simple meals, Huyen carried a secret plan in her heart, a plan to give Dee something he had never had before. She wanted to give him not only a meal, not only gratitude, but a celebration, a memory that would live in his heart forever. Because tomorrow would not be just another day. Tomorrow would be the first time in Dee's life that he would blow out birthday candles. The afternoon sun was hot, pressing down on the dusty village road as Huyen carried her basket of vegetables. She walked from house to house, selling bunches of Malabar spinach, cucumbers, and bitter melons. Some people smiled and bought without bargaining, while others frowned and shook their heads, complaining that her prices were too high. Huyen bowed politely either way, her smile never fading, though her shoulders ached from the weight of the basket. By the time she reached the small market at the edge of the village, the shadows were lengthening. She sold the last bundle of greens and tucked a few wrinkled bills into the pocket of her blouse. It wasn't much, barely enough for rice and fish sauce, but tonight she had something else in mind. Walking past the fabric stall, she stopped. A plain but sturdy men's shirt hung on display. Its soft blue color reminded her of the sky after rain. She touched the cloth gently, imagining Dee wearing it, imagining the surprise in his eyes. After a moment of hesitation, she took out the crumpled bills and handed them to the vendor. The money she had saved from weeks of selling vegetables was gone in an instant, but her heart felt strangely light. She also stopped at a small bakery in the town. Rows of simple cakes, frosted with white cream and decorated with strawberries, sat behind the glass. Huyen had never bought such a thing before. Her hands trembled slightly as she pointed to the smallest cake and asked the baker to wrap it carefully. By the time she returned home, the sky was glowing orange. Maya ran to greet her, eyes wide when she saw the package in her mother's hands. "Mama, is that for Uncle Dee?" she whispered excitedly, calling him as she always did. "SHH, Huyen smiled, pressing a finger to her lips. "It's our secret. Tomorrow is his birthday. For the first time, we'll give him a real celebration." Maya clapped her hands in delight. She had never seen her mother look so full of quiet determination. Together, they hid the cake and the shirt in the corner of a cupboard. whispering like two conspirators planning a beautiful surprise. Outside, Dee continued working in the fading light, stacking firewood and checking the bamboo trellis. He had no idea that the ordinary day he thought tomorrow would bring was about to become one of the most unforgettable moments of his life. The morning of Dee's birthday arrived quietly, with the same soft glow of sunlight spilling over the fields. To him, it was no different from any other day. He woke early, washed his face at the well, and went straight to the garden to tend to the bitter melon vines, never suspecting that this day held something more. But inside the small house, excitement was bubbling. Huyen rose earlier than usual, her mind already filled with plans. She whispered to Maya while the little girl rubbed the sleep from her eyes. "Today, we'll cook something special for him. Promise me. Don't tell Uncle D until the evening." Maya grinned, her lips sealed with a playful finger. "I promise." Together, they began preparing. Huyen sorted the vegetables she had saved from the garden: fresh cucumbers, crisp spinach, and tender bitter melon. She took out a piece of pork she had carefully bought at the market, wrapping it with care. Maya followed her everywhere, passing the herbs, washing the rice, humming happily under her breath. Even great-grandmother noticed the unusual energy in the air. She shuffled closer and asked, "What's going on, child?" Huyen only smiled gently and replied, "Just making the day a little brighter, Grandma." In the corner of the house, the hidden shirt and the cake waited patiently, as if holding their own secret breath. By midday, the smell of cooking filled the house. Huyen stirred the pot of soup, her hair damp with steam, while Maya arranged the plates neatly on the wooden table. Every gesture, though simple, was filled with love. For them, this was not just a meal, it was a message, a way to tell Dee he was not alone anymore, that he had a home, a family, and a place where he belonged. Outside, Dee wiped the sweat from his brow and looked at the sky, which was already gathering heavy clouds. The rainy season was near, and he worried about the crops, about the trellis he had just built. His mind was occupied with practical concerns, but his heart was at peace. He had no idea that behind those thin wooden walls, Huyen and Maya were preparing to give him a gift far more valuable than anything he could have imagined. As the sun dipped lower, the table was set, the candles placed quietly in the cake, and the house filled with warmth that no storm could ever take away. The rain had already begun to fall in thin silver threads when Dee walked home that evening. His shirt clung to his back, his hands rough with mud from fixing the bamboo trellis before the storm grew heavier. He pushed open the door quietly, expecting to find the house dim, dinner simple, and Maya already dozing after school. Instead, he froze. The small wooden table was set neatly, covered with dishes he had not seen in months: pork stew, fragrant soup, stir-fried greens. The soft glow of an oil lamp lit the room, and Maya was standing proudly beside it, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Welcome home, Uncle D," she chirped, rushing to take his hand. Dee blinked, surprised. "What is all this? Did something happen?" Before he could ask further, Huyen appeared from the kitchen, her cheeks still flushed from cooking. She carried a small cake carefully in her hands, its white cream trembling under the flicker of the lamp. On top, 3 tiny candles burned steadily, their flames dancing in the still air. "Happy birthday, Dee," Huyen said softly, her voice trembling with both shyness and courage. For a moment, Dee could not speak. His eyes widened, then softened as he looked from the cake to Huyen, then to Maya, who was bouncing on her toes. Clapping her hands, he finally whispered, almost to himself, "A birthday. For me." Maya tugged his sleeve. "Blow the candles, Uncle D. Make a wish first." His hands shook slightly as he placed them together, closing his eyes. In that brief silence, memories flooded back, years of lonely nights, years without celebration, without anyone remembering. And now, here he was, standing in a home filled with warmth, with a woman who cared and a child who called him family. He opened his eyes and smiled, truly smiled. Then he leaned forward and blew out the candles. The little flames vanished, but inside his chest, another flame had just begun to burn, a flame of belonging. The room burst into claps and laughter. Maya hugged him tightly around the waist, while Huyen set the cake on the table, her eyes shining with quiet pride. For the first time in his 38 years, D had celebrated his birthday. And though it was simple, with only 3 candles and the sound of rain outside, it was more than he had ever dreamed of.
After the laughter and the meal, Maya ran to the cupboard and pulled out a neatly wrapped bundle. She handed it to D with a grin. "Open it, Uncle D." Inside was the blue shirt, simple yet new, folded with care. D held it in his hands, stunned. No one had ever given him a gift before. Slowly, he tried it on, and Huyen laughed softly. "It suits you. Maybe too well. You look like someone important now."
D's eyes grew misty. He looked at Huyen and Maya, his voice thick with emotion. "This is the happiest day of my life. I don't need anything else. As long as I have you both." Outside, the rain fell harder, but inside their small home was nothing but warmth. For the first time, D felt whole, his life no longer empty, but filled with love, laughter, and a family that was truly his. The story of D's first birthday celebration teaches us a simple yet profound truth. Happiness does not come from wealth, luxury, or grand occasions, but from love and genuine connection. For 38 years, D never once had the chance to blow out candles or feel the warmth of a family gathering. Yet in one small evening, with a homemade meal, a little cake, and the laughter of Huyen and Maya, he experienced a happiness richer than anything money could buy. We often wait for perfect conditions to celebrate life, waiting until we are successful, waiting until we have enough. But this story shows us that joy can bloom in the humblest of places, with the simplest of gifts. What matters most is not the size of the cake or the cost of the shirt, but the love with which they are given. These tears remind us that even if happiness comes late, it can still be complete. Love has the power to heal old wounds, to make up for years of emptiness, and to turn an ordinary evening into a memory that lasts forever. It tells us to cherish the people who stand beside us, because with them, every day can feel like a celebration.